Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We are going to be going over PowerPoint presentations and how to take them to the next level. I am your webinar host for today. I am based in North Carolina in the United States. I'm Tess, and I am by day a leadership and influence consultant, but I love PowerPoint and believe strongly that a poorly designed PowerPoint reduces the impact of your message. So I have a big background in instructional design and really work hard to make PowerPoints that stand out and have impact, and then also teach others how to do the same thing. So today you're going to learn my favorite tips and tricks that I use to make my PowerPoint presentations look clean and professional, and this is the big one, interesting, because a lot of times our PowerPoint presentations look clean and professional, but they're really, really boring, and people don't listen to us by the end of them. So we want that trifecta. We want clean, professional, and interesting, and that's really what is going to give your PowerPoint presentations impact. If you have any questions as I go through everything today, there will be a Q&A section at the end. Additionally, you can connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram to ask me additional questions after today. You will be getting a copy of this sent out after our session, and any websites that I mention while I'm going through this webinar, I will also bring up at the end so that you'll be able to see them again. Also, feel free to ask a question in the question box at the end if I reference a website and you didn't have a chance to jot that down. So let's jump in. Let's kick it off today by the three areas I'm going to talk about. We're going to talk about designing slides with impact, considering animations your friend, and making visuals that pop. Oh, wait. Let's back up, because what I just showed you is a boring slide. And I'm not taking PowerPoint to the next level when I'm showing you a slide like this. This is one of those slides that I see time and time again in a PowerPoint presentation. This is a slide don't in my world because it's not interesting. And if every slide looks like this, people stop listening. So let me show you, before I jump into these three categories, how I would take this boring introduction slide and turn it into two really interesting introduction slides. Same question. Are you ready to kick your PowerPoint design skills up a notch? But check it out. I made a very boring slide interesting because I used a full screen image as the background. And I used two font types. I really like to mix up fonts on slides. So this is a very, this is an art and a skill to do, because you don't just want to mix up any two fonts, but I like to put a script font with a very block font a lot of times. So Arial is a really good block font, and then choosing or even putting Arial in italics on the same slide can be helpful. Something that I would do to this slide to kick it up and even kick it up even one more notch is to use the color matching tool. So one of the things I'm going to do in this webinar that I only do in my PowerPoint webinars is toggle in and out of display mode, so that, or presentation mode, so that I can show you some of these tools in action. So we took this boring slide, and the first thing I did was take the title from the boring slide, put it on this slide. I put it in all caps, and that's okay to do because it's a title. And then I mixed it with a font, but now I want to kick it up one more notch, and I want to make this orange actually match the orange down here with the gal on the far right. So I'm going to use the color matching tool. I love this tool. So let me escape out of presentation mode, and I'm going to double click and select all of my text. And over here in my font icon, instead of choosing one of these colors, I'm going to go to the eyedropper tool. So the technical term is eyedropper tool. I call it the color matching tool. But I'm going to choose eyedropper, and now look at this. anywhere I roll my mouse, it's going to pick up the color that's in the picture. So I want my orange to match the oranges. Okay, it's calling it brown. That's okay. The orangish brownish color of this gal's sweater. So once my eyedropper tool's in the right spot, I just click it. And there we go. So now I have made, and that's a little dark, I probably wouldn't keep it, but now I've used that eyedropper tool and I've matched the color of my text to the color of her shirt. I might actually choose the pink on the middle gal's shirt. It could be a little easier to show up, but for purposes of the demonstration, this one works just fine. All right, so I'm taking that boring introduction slide and I'm putting it into two really interesting slides. So here's the first one, and here's the second one. I love to find images that I can layer text directly onto. So computer screens are really good for that because here are the three things I want to show you now. We're going to design slides with impact. We're going to consider animations our friend. And we're going to make visuals that pop. And those are the three things that make a PowerPoint presentation clean, professional, and interesting. These are the three things that I do 100% of the time when I'm designing a PowerPoint presentation. The thing about this slide is that I could have given you those three areas in bullets like I did on the boring slide, but instead I put it into SmartArt. So I want to show you something about SmartArt that I love. Instead of using a bulleted list, I went to Insert. Where is it over here? SmartArt, okay? So these are all of our pre-made tools. I chose the triple Venn diagram. I love it. And when the diagram came up, I typed in my text, okay? I used all caps because I really like a mix of fonts. And so in this case, things are in all caps here, but this heading is bigger than the text on the Venn diagram. Then here's what I love about SmartArt. I clicked the design tab. So, I mean, I could change this around if I wanted to. Once I type everything in, I can see, oh, would it look better as something else? I mean, that one's okay. I really like the triple Venn diagram, and I'm going to show you why in a few later slides because I do something else with this one in a different section of our webinar today. But what I love is that I can change the colors. So I can make it gray. I can make it orange. I really like the blue, okay? And so now I go up here to the SmartArt styles, and look what happens. So this is one way to really make a good, interesting impact on your slide is to play with the SmartArt styles. A lot of times when you do SmartArt, it's going to give it to you in just a regular set of colors, and that wouldn't pop as well. That actually wouldn't look very good. And so I go back to my blue, but then I play up here with the styles. I've used this one before. I really like it. Those would make great circles on a blank slide. So SmartArt styles is a really good tip. Also look, so I downloaded this picture from unsplash.com, and I'm going to show you that website at the end. It's one of my favorite free image sites, unsplash.com. So I downloaded this picture, and I knew that I would be able to fit text in the computer screen. And in order to make sure that my heading showed up, take a look back here. So the heading shows up here. It's not great, so I just made a text box. All right, and I put the text box behind my text, and then I used my favorite tool, color matching, the eyedropper, and I made it the color of the brick. And so it kind of shows up. Some of you may not have even seen it until I showed it to you that this text box was here, and I just did it to make sure you could read this heading. All right, so I took my boring slide and I made it into three great slides. And that animation you see there, I'm going to talk about that later in the webinar when we get to consider animations your friend. All right, so our first section then is design slides with impact. And I already gave you an example of taking a boring slide and turning it into two really interesting slides. And what I want to do in this section is show you exactly how I design slides with impact. So I'll be giving you just a bunch of examples and breaking them down for you. So if I can leave you with anything today, it's to not use bulleted lists anymore in your PowerPoints. So there's going to be times when you need to use a bulleted list. You might be sharing financials. You might have a team of executives that you're in front of, and you've just got to get quick and dirty. Here's my point. Here's another point. Here's another point, because you don't have time to be fancy. I get that. So there is a place for bullet points. But I do see people overusing them. And when every slide is just mixed with bullet points, your end users get bored. And so when you can mix it up, maybe even just put one slide that doesn't have bullet points on the screen instead of every slide, you pique interest and you bring your audience back in, and they start paying attention to you again because something on the screen looks different, it feels different. And so that's a little adult learning trick. By mixing up your slides, you keep people's interests piqued. So what's on the screen matters. That's basically what I'm trying to say. And other things, so bullet points, I don't want you to use them all the time. Something else that I'd love to leave you with today is that clip art is dead. Clip art is in 1990, and we used a lot of clip art in the 90s, and that's great. But now we are in the 21st century, and we are in a place where there are so many good quality free images out there, and I'll give you my favorite free sites at the end, that you can use big, high quality images that really make your PowerPoints look professional. This is another free image I downloaded from Unsplash. Which I'll show you at the end of the webinar. And instead of making it the full screen, I just decided to make it part of the screen. I love taking big images and then layering text boxes over top of them and then putting my text on top. So I showed you how to do that in the previous slide. And here it's the same thing. What you see is a text box. Here it is behind my text. Now, on the previous screen, I didn't do anything with transparency, but I do love a transparent text box. So let me show you how I do that. When I click on the text box, let me see, I'm going to move my text a little bit. When I click on the text box, see over here, this transparency tool comes up. And so I play with the transparency and make the text box either not transparent at all, which is 0%, so that it would look completely white, or I can make it almost invisible. You can see how that changes there. So I love a transparent text box. And I love to play with placement of words. So, you know, we live in a PowerPoint habit where I think most people do, where we think the title has to go on the top of the screen. And if you want to take your PowerPoints to the next level and make them interesting, don't put your titles at the top of the screen. I love to put a title in the middle of the page. You can make it stand out by making it bold, which is what I've done here, writing it in all caps, making the font different. So I can make this stand out by choosing, I love Arial Black. That's a really good font, and making it bigger and just playing around with that and seeing, see, that looks like a title even though it's in the middle of the screen, and people's eyes would go straight to it because it stands out. All right, so let's look at some slide design examples. So this next section, I'm going to give you, I think about 5 slide designs that I've done, and I'm going to break them down for you. So use numbers whenever you can, because they really help to get your point across. When you use numbers, think about putting them big in a big font on the screen and placing them prominently in a spot on the screen. So here, not only have I made my number big, but I've used different fonts in different sizes and colors for impact. So I've mixed it all up. What makes this slide work is that the background is just light gray. And so it's not too busy. You'll notice as we go through that I love to use the line tool to break up text. So in this case, I typed in this percentage, I made it big, then I made this a little smaller, I made the Gallup December 2017 even a little smaller, and then I put a line in there just for some impact. So if you don't know where your shape tool is, and hopefully everybody does, but if you don't know about the shape tool, it's under Insert and Shapes. So anytime you see a box that I either make transparent or have fully colored in, like this white box, I'm just using this rectangle shape. And then here is the line tool. So what I love to do with the line tool is change the color. So outline. Let me make it, because it's coming up as this default blue, but I really like this blue. So I'm going to make it this blue. And then I play with the weight. So if you don't do this, this is a really great thing. I can make it really thick. I think that line above, it's at, yep, 4.5 point. But sometimes a really thin line is good, and sometimes a thicker line. So play with the line weight and also play with the line type. Sometimes I find myself, let's see, let me make this one big so we can see it. Sometimes I find myself using the dashes. So that can be really interesting to have the round dot. Also, you might do a line this way, okay? So the line tool can be a great way to get some interest on your slide. Here is another example of using a number and placing it in a prominent spot that's not at the top of the screen. So I just used a number and then a regular font on here. This is probably Arial, and I just made it italicized. What makes this stand out is I made the text box blue. So you immediately are drawn to it, rather than me having a title that says, what percentage of change initiatives fail? And then underneath, 70% is the first bullet. And the second bullet is the biggest contributor is resistant employees. Now, you saw in that previous slide where I had the computer screen and I had layered my 3 circles in it. You saw on that one that I love to use, like I said, an image where I can put text directly on it. And this is another example. I like minimalist images that can serve as my background. So again, I got this one from unsplash.com, UNSPLASH, unsplash.com. And I just downloaded it and insert it into my PowerPoint. So here's another good trick. I'm full of tricks. That's all I'm showing you today. When you right-click on your slide, so I've right-clicked here, and I'm going to choose Format Background, okay? Over here are my fill options. So that slide can be any color I want it to, right? So I could make it gold and play around with transparency. I can do a gradient fill. That's kind of fancy. Or I can do a picture fill. I don't recommend a texture fill. That's a little too much in my in my opinion. What I like to use is picture fill and then file and then insert my picture. So these are some pictures I have. Here's that picture of the people I used before. You're going to see some of these in other presentation or in other slides. So here's another one where I would play around with placement, but just doing picture, fill, and then going file, and then choosing the picture that I've downloaded to my computer. That's a really good trick to use, because then you can play with the transparency, and I really like to do that, and I'll show you that on another slide. All right, let me just back up. I just want to be sure I get back to the way this slide was. Uh-oh, may not let me. That's okay. All right, so let's go to the next slide. Here's another example. I've used an image as the full background, and I've layered a text box on top of it, and then put my text on top of, or I've layered a shape on top of it, made the shape white, made it a little transparent, and then put my text on top of it. I could also use the color dropper, the eyedropper tool, to make this box match any color on this screen. So that could be kind of cool. I could make this box be the purple and this guy's shirt in the front, the pink and that lady's sneakers right in front of him. It's really it's a really good design element when the colors on your screen go, and that eyedropper tool is the best way to make that happen. I do have one more way I make that happen that I will show you in another section. The 2 things that make this PowerPoint slide professional, clean, and interesting are this. I've set the transparency of this picture to 7%. If I take it back down, it was just a little too dark for me. So I set it at 7. I could probably even go, I actually like that a little better at about 17%. So the first thing that makes this slide work is that this picture is not too dark. it's busy, but because I made it transparent, the busyness isn't overwhelming. The second thing that makes this slide work is that I centered the text. So instead of just having it go all the way across the top, I decided to make it 2 lines so that the word disengagement stuck out, and put a box behind it so you could see it. But I kind of centered it here. So those are the 2 things that make this slide professional, clean, and interesting. Word placement is really important to me when you're designing slides with impact. Again, when you're trying to not use bullets and you're trying to not put every heading at the top of the screen, you've got to start to get creative. My favorite place to put stuff is in the center of the screen. So you can see here that I'm already using the tools. I've already used the tools that I'm sharing with you. So capital letters, I'm mixing colors. So what I wanted on this slide to stand out was the phrase unwritten rules. And then I'm using bold, and I'm also using a smaller font in addition to a bigger font. So I'm mixing things up on this slide. What makes it work is that I'm keeping it simple and it's got a very light background. Another thing that makes it work is that I'm using a sans serif font. So this font is sans serif. The opposite is a serif font. And if you look in PowerPoint at the font Georgia or the font Times New Roman, those are fonts that have serifs. So if anybody has a question about that, I can show you an actual example at the end. Another thing that I've done here is I've given my white text box a gray line. I want to show that piece to you. So when you do a shape, you can go up to the format bar and you can do shape fill. And then another thing you can do is shape outline. So sometimes I like to change the outline of my shape. So here I could make it blue. I could also make it the same red that I have here. Actually, that's kind of cool. I actually like that a little more than the gray that I had. So shape lines are an interesting way to make a slide have more impact. Shape effects, I use these sparingly. I do want to point out this is my favorite one, the outer shadow. So you can see kind of here in the bottom side how that shadow comes. Let me offset the shadow this way so now you can really see it. I don't recommend. That's kind of cool, actually, perspective. So see how sometimes, here's a good trick that I didn't even plan on sharing with you, everybody. Sometimes I just roll my mouse over everything and see what looks best. And I don't actually use perspective much, but that looks kind of cool. I don't use reflection much because it just doesn't add anything, and sometimes it takes away from your message. I don't use glow. This is going to make your PowerPoint just, I don't know, it just doesn't look great. Soft edges aren't good for this one. Bevel you have to use sparingly. It's not going to show up here, but sometimes it can be too much. 3D rotation is usually always too much. So there's some examples of 3D rotation. I probably just messed that up too. Haha. Okay, so here we go. On to the next slide. And instead of, let me put it back in slideshow mode. All right, so here's another example of text placement. And I use layers in this example, and so I really wanted to include this picture to show you the different layers I have. One thing I hope you're noticing by now is that all of these tips I'm giving you, I don't use on every slide. I don't use all the time. So I have my favorite things I do, but it doesn't mean I'm always doing them all on the same slide, because less is more when you're making designs clean and professional. Less is more. Just like when you're getting dressed in the morning. I don't know if anybody on here has children, but I have a 4-year-old and they have tacky day at daycare, and she puts on all the prints. And hey, even when it's not tacky day, she mixes her Spider-Man shirt with flower leggings and, you know, purple sneakers, and she looks like a hot mess, and she thinks she looks great. And so she wears it to school, right? And less is more when we're getting dressed in the morning, and it's the same thing with PowerPoint slides too. So I want to show you these layers. There are 3 layers to this slide. The first is the picture in the background. So I did the same thing where I right-clicked on the slide. I chose Format Background, then I chose Picture, and then I did File, and I found my picture on my computer. Then I made a rectangle shape. I changed the shape to blue, and I made it transparent so we can kind of see the picture. Then my third layer is text and lines. So there are a bunch of text boxes on this screen. So layer 1, my picture, layer 2, this text box, and layer 3, all of the text. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 text boxes on this screen, and I added this line for interest. So I love using lines. They really make your PowerPoints look super professional. And so again, I right click on the line and I chose a 3/4 point weight for this one, okay? One of the things that you may not be using much in PowerPoint that I do play around with is the color tool and the artistic tool for an image. So if I right click on my image and choose format background, I can click on the picture right here, and there are some picture correction presets that I can use, right? I can also change sharpness, brightness, contrast, and then I can also change color. So here's where I made my picture black and white. I didn't download it as black and white. I changed it over here in my format background options. So you can see here under presets for color saturation, there are other things to choose. Okay, so these are all things to play around with. There's another way to change the color of a picture, and I'll show that to you on a later slide. I don't have the option now because I made the slide, the picture my slide background instead of just a picture on the slide. So I'll show you that in the next one. Here's my last slide for, or my last example for designing slides with impacts. So I do like to use slide backgrounds that are not just plain white all the time. And I really like gray because it's very minimal and it doesn't just detract from everything else on the slide. In this example, instead of using a bulleted list, I took a picture and I cropped the picture to a shape. So each of these pictures were squares, and then I used the cropping tool to crop to shape. So you might use the cropping tool. What I'd love to share with you today is that you should be using, if I go up here to format, the crop to shape portion, because this can make your slide very interesting too. And I love to do this with pictures in order to make them smaller and then make them stand out with text underneath. And so here I just used the circle as my basic shape, and then I can go and crop it even more. So notice now I could make this circle even smaller if I wanted to, okay? Another thing that I did here with this picture, and you can see it really well on this agenda picture, is I went to picture border and I chose a white border color. So you can see that, see how I just changed it to yellow, I just changed it to green. I like to use a picture border because it makes the pictures look clean and crisp, and that is another thing that makes your PowerPoint slides stand out. Okay, so that is our design slides with impact section. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and keep putting them in the question box. There are a few coming in, and I will answer all questions at the end. So if there's something that I just shared that you missed or you want to see again, then all you have to do is take a note and pop it in the question box at the end, or you can do it right now. All right. Our next section then is animation can be your friend. So animation can also be your enemy. Let's start there. And you can actually, when using animation sparingly and in the right way, make it your friend and have it make your PowerPoint really stand out and really be interesting. So here's what I mean. Animation like this and like this. Nope. We don't want to use those. So that was a quick quiz, right? Clip art is dead. We're not using clip art. I'm going to show you what to use instead of clip art. If you can't always use big images like I do, I'll show you at the end my favorite non-clip art site for icons. So icons are the new clip art. And that's the way to go. So I'll show you my favorite icon site at the end of our webinar. But some animations go over the top. This is not an animation you want to use. I don't even know what this one's called. The spin, maybe. And then this one is the I don't know, fade. I'm not sure what this one is, but they're not good. So take a look at this one. Oh wait, oh, it's not coming up. There we go. Oh, here's my first point, and my second, and my third. Okay, everybody. So this is not taking your PowerPoint to the next level. This is not, animation's not your friend here. You're just putting it in because you can, right? So it's not adding to the slide because we're just using basic bullets and we're just bringing them in one by one. And so this, again, not taking it to the next level. So these two slides might be things that you do currently. So let me show you what to do differently. Here are some of my favorite slides that I've designed with animation examples. Oh, and hey, somebody did just ask in the question panel, and I will go ahead and answer this one. Will it be possible for us to access the file you used for the demonstration afterwards? Absolutely, everybody. So Sydney, who runs these webinars for me, usually sends it out to the group. And if you don't get it, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I can bring that information back up at the end, and I can be happy to send it to you if you missed that email from Excel with Business. All right, so remember this slide, and remember how instead of using bullets, I decided to use SmartArt. So I love this slide because I am able to animate each circle in on its own. I'm going to show you how to do that. It's a really nifty trick that I use. But then also I mentioned that when you do these things, it's a trifecta. I consider it the sweet spot. Okay, so take a look at how I just used animation to my benefit. I want you to do these three things. So what I'm doing as I animate these in is building a triple Venn diagram for you. But then I want you to do all three of these things, and I'm going to call it the sweet spot. See how that just flows in? So this is not brain surgery. I'm going to show you, this is one of my favorite animation slides that I've done, and I want to show you how I made this happen very easily without much effort at all. All right, so the first thing I did was make my SmartArt, all right? And then I went to, hold on, I have to move my webinar box so that I can see all of my tools. Then I went to animation, and I went to appear. So appear is my favorite animation option. This is the one that I probably 80% of the time use, okay? So I chose appear. Now what SmartArt does by default is bring the entire picture in at once. So if you look at it, this all came in at once, but I don't want that. So here's the trick. You go to Effect Options and one by one. So by choosing that, see now how I have a 1, 2, 3? By choosing that, now it's 3 different animations. Okay, so if Effect Options, one by one, I really love. So here then is how I made this this segment. So this is 3 different pieces that I have grouped together. So if I right click here, you can see these are 3 different things. This is a text box, this is a line, and this is a free form shape that I drew. So two more things here, and I'm showing you intermediate things today, everybody. So I'm assuming you have a basic level of PowerPoint understanding. So some of this stuff might be getting lost if some of these things that I'm showing you don't already know about. Okay, so if I go to Insert, Shape, the freeform shape tool, this one, it's called the Scribble. Okay, so it's tricky to do this because if I want to make the shape, let's say I want to try to make this one down here. I click, oh wait, hold on. I might not be able to show you, let's see. So here's my, oh, I know what I'm doing wrong. All right, so I right click and I keep right clicking. So you can see how here, and it drew it in blue. Okay, so that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to go to Shapes and choose this tool, which is the curve. okay? So the curve is tricky. It took me some time to figure it out, but if I left click one time, then I get this line. And each time I left click, the line stops. And so it might be hard to see, but I'm making it curve because I keep left clicking. And each time I click, it's making something. And then when I double click, it's done. Whoops. And so what we have here, see this shape that I just made? Okay, that's what I did here. And then once I made the shape, I just chose fill and fill it with white, okay? So if you missed that, I used the shape, I went to insert, shape, and you can use scribble or you can use curvy line tool. And if that one's tricky, I just recommend Googling and finding a YouTube video. That will definitely help you and just show you how to do it because that can be tricky to get used to. All right, so then what I did, I knew I wanted all of these to animate in. So I clicked on the text box, then I held down Shift and I clicked my arrow and still holding down Shift, I clicked my shape. So now all three are selected. And then I right click and I choose group, just like that. All right, so here's an example of me not using the appear animation tool. I could have it appear, but I wanted to make animation my friend and make it a little fancy. So I chose for it to fly in. Now, you may be thinking, Tess, that's not the way that it flew in. You're right. Over here under Effect Options, check it out. So it automatically flies in from the bottom, but I want it to fly in from the left. You know what? Now that I see this, it looks like that's not what I did at all. Let's see. Maybe I chose what I did. I chose wipe. Okay. So on wipe, see how it went from the middle out and I wanted it to go from the outside in. So on Effect Options, let's do from top. And there it is, everybody. There you go. So hopefully a lot of you picked up on that. I'm not sure I'll have time at the end to do that one again. This was one of the most complex slides that I was going to show, but at least you got the elements of it and hopefully jotted down the elements so that you can Google them on your own down the line. All right, so I do like to use animations to tell jokes in PowerPoint presentations, and everybody loves a good joke. And so sometimes it's just good to throw a joke in to make your PowerPoint more interesting. So this is a very simple joke. I have a picture, maybe I'm talking blah, blah, blah about teamwork and team building and good leadership. And then I just, while I'm talking, click my mouse and animate in some type of joke. Okay, so here I was trying to make a joke about how people are disengaged and how even if everybody in this group is giving high fives, really just this guy's the only guy who cares. So while I'm talking about that, I have the joke pop up in the background. It seems simple. It has a lot of impact using animations to just layer in a joke while you're talking. I highly recommend it. I think they're always a hit. You can't go wrong with a joke. Even if it's a bad joke, people still laugh because it's bad, right? So I think jokes are a win all the time. All right, here's another good animation example. So what I've done here is I've used my shape tool. One of the shapes in the shape tool is a thinking bubble. So I drew a thinking bubble, and now I'm animating in this guy's thoughts. Okay. Oh yeah, I made this background transparent. I wanted to remind you how I did that earlier. I made this one transparent so that it wouldn't overtake the screen. I made these conversation bubbles transparent too, and look down here at the bottom. I probably shouldn't have made them that transparent because it's kind of hard to see. That third one is hard to see. One tip that I'll show you here is that I made my first one and then I copied and pasted so that they would all be the same size. Okay. And the thing about a conversation bubble is that I then hovered my mouse over this yellow circle and then left click and hold it down. So I'm going to click and drag, and that's what moves the bubble or the conversation piece. Okay, so I copied and pasted all three of these so that they would be the same size. And then I just moved these bubbles so that they would all look like they're coming from his brain. Okay, so if I wanted to change the transparency on this, because I probably should make it a little less see-through. Let's see if I can do it. There we go. Something cool might have been to do this and make them different levels of transparency, right? So maybe I chose to do that. That doesn't look half bad. So again, I use animation in here to layer in this guy's thoughts. So instead of using bullets, I pretended like these are the things coming from his brain. I'm using a bit of a joking manner too, because I want people to laugh about what I'm sharing. The point is, I'm using this slide to add to my presentation instead of taking away from it. When slides take away from our presentation, it's because we're putting every single bit of text on the slide and in bullets. When slides add to our presentation, it's because we're thoughtfully putting things on there that complement what we're saying. One of the mantras that I live by is that the PowerPoint is not the presentation, I am the presentation. So people come to a presentation to hear my opinion and my thoughts and what I'm going to say. The visual supports what I'm saying. So, there are some cases where that's not true because you need to show charts and you need to show a timeline or you need to show financials. But the majority of the time, the PowerPoint isn't the presentation, you are. And so you want slides that add to your story and not detract from it. If what you're saying is what exactly is on the slide, people will tune you out. I promise. Because you've been there. If I can read what's being said and the presenter is just reading off of the slide, then why am I even listening? Like, I can just read everything. Just send it to me in an email and we didn't even have to have this meeting, right? So maybe today you leave with the idea that the PowerPoint is not the presentation, I am the presentation. And when I design slides, I really want those slides to make what I'm saying more interesting. I want them to add value. I don't want them to take away. All right, this is another really good slide. So I've done 2 sets of animation on this slide. The first piece of animation I've done is a box highlighting. So in this case, I actually did use the blur or the shape animation. Notice how shape animation, when I click it the first time, the default is that it goes from the outside in. I really wanted this one to grow from the inside out. So I went to Effect Options and I did Inside Out. So if you aren't using this Effect Options tool, start trying it. It's one way to make animation your friend. Another thing I could do here is if I wanted to get really fancy, that's kind of cool. Maybe I choose to keep that one, okay? But Effect Options is good. Here's the next thing that I've done. So let me show you what this guy does. So first I'm talking about this slide. I highlight the Valley of Despair because I'm talking about it. And then I say, hey, look, this guy, he's really committed. But if we don't give him good leadership, if we don't motivate him and keep him engaged, if we don't make sure he feels appreciated, he's going to slide from commitment back down to the Valley of Despair. And then he's going to climb back up to commitment, and he's going to slide back down to the Valley of Despair. Okay? This is called a motion path. So maybe the tool you take away today is the motion path. So easy to do. There are 2 animations on this dude, on our mountain climber. So the first animation is that I just wanted him to appear when I was ready to talk about it. So I clicked on him, I clicked the appear animation. Great. But then I wanted to add an animation. So if you've not used this icon before, the add animation icon, you can do a couple things after you add an entrance icon. You can do emphasis, so I can make him pulse. You can do exit, I can make him disappear, or you can do a motion path, okay? And that's what I've done here. So you can do all of these preset motion paths. I can make him go in a star, I can make him wiggle, I can make him turn around. I drew my own motion path for this one, okay? So I just drew a line. I wanted him to go from one point to the next, so I chose line motion path. And then look, I could move it around. So I could have him go straight down if I wanted to. I could have him go up if I wanted to. But I just inserted a line, motion path, okay? And then that was my second animation. So now this appears, my mountain climber appears, and when I click again, he slides down into the Valley of Despair. So you can make animation your friend by doing the motion path. I really like that one. All right, so let's go into our third section. We're going to wrap up because I want to leave a little bit of time for Q&A. Let's make visuals pop. So I've been showing you how to make visuals that pop all along, but I wanted to show you just a few more things. One of the things I really like to do, like I said with the computer screen, is find an image that I can put text directly onto. I found this image of a notebook, so I put my text on the left, and then I'm going to make animation my friend and animate in more text. So I put an artistic effect on this picture, which is made it black and white, use the transparent tool, made it a little lighter, and then wrote my text directly on top of it. Threw a little arrow in there to get my point across. All right, let's look at this slide again. Remember this guy? So we talked about this in the beginning. I also like to do this nifty little trick where I pull people out or pull objects out of a slide. So let's go from this to this. Okay, this is so easy to do. Here's what I did. So here's our picture. Okay. So the first thing that I did was I copied this picture. So right click, copy, and then paste a second one on here. Okay. Then the next thing I did was I cropped to shape. So I got a format, crop, crop to shape, circle. Looks like my computer's starting to get a little slow. I think it's mad at me for going back and forth so much because that crop is not coming up. So it is not going to do it, everybody. There we go. All right. So I crop to a circle, and then I basically get rid of everything else, except for this guy. Okay. Once I've done that, I duplicate the slide. So I right click on the slide and I duplicate. So here it is. I duplicate the slide. You can't see, but there's our highlighted guy in our black striped shirt. Let's call him John, make it easier, okay? So now I'm going to go back to my image, and I'm going to go to Format, Color, Gray, black and white. Okay, so what I did here, let's see, I might not be able to go out of presentation mode anymore, everybody. Looks like my computer is starting to get a little mad at me. So what I did here is copy the slide. And then I took out that text at the top, but I basically recreated that. So I love that little trick, crop to shape, and then you duplicate the slide, and then you turn the background picture gray, and then whatever's in the circle stands out. So let's see, I got 2 more slides. I'm going to show you all my favorite sites because I'm getting some questions about that. So I showed you, oops, there's the slide, but I want to show you this one other thing. I use the color dropper tool to make the diamond in this picture the same color as that flower. But I actually have a favorite site that I use for colors when I'm making visuals that pop, and it's called coolers.co, and I'll show you what it is. But essentially, it gives you 5 colors that all go together at a time, and it's really, really great. So another way to make visuals that pop is to choose a color scheme. One way to choose a color scheme is to use the eyedropper tool and to make the colors that of your shapes and your text the same as colors in the background. That really makes a difference. But another way to do it is with my favorite color generator site. So here we go. These are the some of the websites I referenced, and then some of the websites that I wanted to be sure to share with you. So let me tell you very quickly what each of these are, and then I'm going to show them to you very quickly. Unsplash is my favorite free site for pictures, but pexels.com is also super duper good. I just find that the type of images I'm looking for, I get a better selection from Unsplash, but I have also used Pexels, and I share it all the time. So the top two are my favorite free websites for pictures. Unsplash.com and Pexels. Flat Icon is, icons are the new clip art, right? So Flat Icon is my favorite icon site. They're all free. A lot of them you do have to give attribution to. You just put in like a size 7 font underneath the icon. That's what I do. So flaticon.com. iStock Photo is another great photo site. This is a paid site. So if you work for a company that has a picture budget, go with iStock Photo because they have a gazillion, that's the technical term, a gazillion pictures, and you will never not find what you're looking for. Before I tell you about Canva, this last one is the color site that I referenced. All right, let me show you all of these very quickly, and then we'll go into the Q&A. All right, so let me start. I'm going to end with Canva. So here's the color scheme one. This is coolers.co. The cool thing about this is I'm on this Generate tab right here. All right, and I can press the space bar, and every time I press the space bar, I get new colors. Then let's see, I find a color that I like. Ooh, I really like this green in the middle. I'm going to click on lock. Then I'm going to press the space bar again. Now I get more colors that go with that green. Oh, okay, I really like this brown. Then I'm going to press the space bar again. So now those two are locked. I love this site. Anytime I need to generate colors, I use it. I really like this blue. And maybe these are the 3 colors I choose to use for my PowerPoint. Okay, so that's a great site. Here's pexels.com. You can type in minimal and get a lot of good slides that are pictures that you can type on. So here's some really good ones that I would use to type on. Okay. Another one that I use a lot is desk. I like pictures of desks. Here is Unsplash. Same thing. We can do texture and see what comes up. One of the things that I like about Unsplash that I don't think Pexels does, it doesn't like texture, there we go, is that, here, let's do desk again, is that people make collections. So instead of scrolling through 2.6 thousand pictures of desks, I might just look at someone's collection of their desk pictures. And so these are people who have made 153 photos of desks, right? So these are like little photo albums where people store their favorites. So I really like that about Unsplash. Here's iStock. iStock has a lot of great illustrations. So if your company has a budget, I highly recommend it. You won't even need any of the other websites if you have this one. And then Canva is a place I go for inspiration. Canva is a free graphic design tool. You can sign up for free. It is canva.com. This is my account. I do have a paid account, but I think that most of what I'm going to show you, you're going to get anyway. So I get slide design ideas from here. So, ooh, I could use cursive and do a big image here, or look, I really like how this text box is layered over here on the spring season sale. Another thing that they have is a whole set of PowerPoint slides, and these I use for inspiration too. So I've used this one before. Look at all these different layouts. So, ooh, I really like that one. The point is, a lot of this stuff is out there, and a lot of what you saw me do today, I didn't come up with on my own. I got inspiration from iStock. I got inspiration from Canva, and I got inspiration from other people's PowerPoints. So I built them myself, but I get inspiration from other places. Okay, so canva.com is really, really great. If you don't have a free account, you design a lot of PowerPoints, I highly recommend, especially if you have to do numbers and stuff. They have a lot of good financial slides and like project update slides. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds here that I don't even have the time to go through. All right, so I just did the website review, and now I want to jump into our Q&A. I have gotten a lot of questions, and so I may not be able to get to all of them, but if you ask me a question and I don't get to it, then feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn afterwards. Why do you place a text box behind another text box? Yeah, I know exactly what you're asking there. Here's why I do it. You can add a shape. Let me find one here. You can add a shape like this rectangle, and then right-click in it and choose Edit Text, and then type, right? Do these 3 things, and then I can make it bold and change the color and change the size. Absolutely. The reason that I use 2 is because I don't have as much formatting freedom when I when I do the text and the shape. And so I like to always layer a text box so that I can do things centered or off center, or even like shrink it and make it a double size when I might not be able to do that the other way. Let's see, website questions. So I've answered those. What tools are best for making slides friendly for people with visual impairment? Yes, some people have problems seeing information on certain colors. I love that question, Denise. What I would share there is simple gray and white backgrounds using all cap letters, and bold using very basic colors like a muted blue and like a muted green. I've designed PowerPoints for people with special needs and had to really pay attention to those with visual impairment. Also, just big bold images where the image is the only thing on the screen and you're talking to the content. That is very helpful as well. How do you search and find your images? So Christy, I just play around on Pexel and Unsplash and see what I like and see what pictures are out there. I love looking for minimal, and desk are two of my favorite options. How do you go about selecting images? That's the same one. How can you make a PowerPoint more exciting when you have to utilize templates with company logos created by the marketing department? I have been there. That drives me crazy because it's not my style. If I had time, I would bring one up for you to show you what I did recently for a company. What I would say there is that you use all their same colors, but you try to stay away from bulleted lists. Try to really use SmartArt, and then also make pictures as big as possible. So see if sometimes you can get away with a picture as the full screen or most of the full screen so that it only isn't covering the logo. I try to bend the rules like that. Let's see. Do you think we should use the Varios fonts? I do not know what those fonts are. I would say if it's too, I'm going to type it in real quick and see if I can find it. I would say, no, I don't have it. So I would say that if it's too busy, don't use it. My rule of thumb is I need very simple fonts. Otherwise, people can't read it or it makes the slide too confusing. So I think that those are all of the questions. So as we wrap up, I want to say thank you to everybody. Here is my contact information in case you want to connect on LinkedIn or Instagram and ask me more questions. And then I will be sending this over to Excel with Business, and they will be sending it out to you. So look for that in your inbox. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.